we're just talking about the cloud, hybrid, on-prem. What are some of the specific things? And look, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, and this is a question for any of you. What are some of the specific things that are done that are, say, in a hybrid environment? Why go hybrid on something? And Andy mentioned, and look, mentioned Bursty, but media related, what kind of use cases do we have here?
Well, considering this is media related, I think one of the good use cases in that scenario is encoding. A lot of companies will encode video that are just regular run-of-the-mill, will encode this every day about the same amount, and they'll budget for that and have on-premise equipment for that. And then suddenly you might license a new content catalog and you need to ingest that within a certain time period. Well, in that case, you can run it through your normal process, but it might take a long while because you don't necessarily have spare capacity. And it's a relatively easy workload to burst into a cloud environment or run in a cloud environment and run it there and then return it back to on-premise. And it's also one of the solutions that I think is very well supported by a lot of the encoding vendors. They can sell you a physical box you can plug in a rack somewhere, and also the software will handle that automatically and move some of that workload of transcoding video into the cloud, because it's such a good scenario for something that you do in a sort of batch way, that you have all this stuff that you run through, and then once you're done with it, you can forget about it, just tear down all the cloud infrastructure and everything is fine. I think that's definitely one of the classic use cases for that.
Yeah, that's a great one. I would add on to that and say, if you're talking about live channels, disaster recovery is a very common workflow for the cloud. So if you're running, somewhere 10 to 15 channels of content regularly, it may make sense to, and they run like 24/7, stand them up, run them in an on-prem environment, but that becomes a single point of failure if for your content going out. So you would typically set up some sort of secondary site and source, and it's very easy to make that the cloud, so that if the signal goes down on the first facility, you get an outage, or there's a disaster in that area, an earthquake or something else, then the systems switch over automatically to that secondary space that it only gets, if it's in a cloud infrastructure, is only spun up for the time period that it's needed until you do the recovery and revert back to your primary sources.
Okay. Now, in fact, sorry,
I was
John?
just going to say, probably the most digestible use case right there, that we've seen so many people that just say, we're not going to spend this for a disaster recovery scenario, that it's perfect, right? It's there, it's available in cloud. Whatever they do from the first instantiation, it's on when you want it and then just off. So,
and for disaster recovery, is it more common to go multi-cloud or single cloud?
It's a great question, and it really is down to the comfort level of the sort of engineering group or the ops group. Often people will start with one, and then there will be an outage in that cloud, because even clouds have outages at times, and so they will make backups for the backups. And so it becomes a scenario where you likely start with an individual one, but over time you have as many backups as possible. There's a reason I have 4 keys to my house strategically placed in places where I know where to find them. I like to have backups of
Wow. Okay.